Hi everybody, Matt Lawton here. This is the Astrological Winds channel, and I'm going to take a look at the astrological weather forecast for the last week in January now, the week of January 25th through 31st, in a month of very accelerated change. Did you guys notice last week on the Mars Uranus inauguration day, there's a big earthquake out in the Philippines, 7.0. So, and then the whole changing of the government here in the United States, really encompassing that Mars-Uranus energy too, in the sense of the new President Biden, like automatically writing a bunch of orders that go against what the last President Trump had written out. So like we're already seeing that once again, that kind of tension, and then the Mars-Uranus just reacting to that in a very impulsive and individualistic way. So a lot of that energy really accelerating, and this week is a very interesting week. There's mainly there's a full moon at 9-10 degrees Leo, which really is like a box for what this week is, because the full moon is when the moon is opposite the sun, and it happens to be the week that the sun is also conjunct Saturn and Jupiter and is squaring Uranus. So we're going to get this like big trigger to the Jupiter-Uranus square, which was exact this month, which is one of the big agents of accelerating change. Putting those two planets together, they want change, they want it rapidly, they want it to expand. So we've been seeing a lot of that energy being pushed out this month, especially with Uranus going direct, with Eris going direct. See a lot of this energy being really pushed out. But this full moon is really just like the whole package of the week. It's exact on Thursday the 28th, but the sun is exact square to Uranus is on Tuesday, and the exact conjunction to Jupiter is actually the same day, Thursday, as the full moon, and the exact conjunction to Saturn was yesterday on Sunday, or Saturday, actually 2 days ago. So all within orb. And then the Mars-Uranus conjunction was exact last Wednesday, still in orb and conjunct. So we have a total fixed T-square going on with 6 of the 9 regular planets: the sun, the moon, Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, and Uranus. So this is really a dynamic week and full moon. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was Mercury is going retrograde on the 30th in Aquarius, and will be so until February 20th. And then one other thing I'll talk about too quickly this week, Venus is conjuncting Pluto. So the full moon is really, basically what is really driving this week, because of everything being tied into the Jupiter-Uranus square and the Mars-Uranus conjunction. So that energy is really prevalent all week long, and is really going to cause a lot of tension. The T-square is like a very tense aspect of two squares in an opposition. So there's like a lot of challenge, a lot of crisis. And when you see how many of the planets are involved, both lights, the sun and moon, and then you also have 4 of the other 7 planets involved, you can see how key and integral this full moon and this square between Jupiter and Uranus is, and the conjunction of Mars and Uranus, all just really reaching like a really critical point. And it's been interesting because I really think the last full moon, the one in Cancer, really triggered a lot of stuff, and a lot more than I actually even expected. I really saw it affect people's like lives in really deep ways, especially like their ability to wonder where their nurturing and safety is, where their structures are going to be if they continue to crumble and fall. So seeing a lot of really like interesting changes going on because of that, and a lot of intense times. And I really think this is going to continue to accelerate that process, you know. So when you think about this full moon, like, okay, it's at 9 or 10 degrees, and it's on the Leo Aquarius axis. So the sun is in Aquarius in detriment, but the full moon, Leo, is ruled by that sun. So the sun is conjunct both Jupiter and Saturn too, and the moon is all by itself, and they're both squaring the Mars Uranus conjunction in Taurus. So very, very interesting, because to me, the full moon in Leo wants to express its individual self. It wants to show the world its special talents, its special gifts, what it wants to almost be voyeuristic about it. It has like this look at me kind of attitude. Look, you know, every person needs to be acknowledged for the unique and individual talents and person that they are. And so that's all about Leo. That's why Leo rules the sun, because it's all about us as an individual and how we shine, how we are like, you know, this talented, gifted individual, every one of us, and we have a light to shine. And so that Leo full moon is like emotionally needs that right now. It needs to be like seen. It needs to be like, it has an emotional need to like have its individuality acknowledged as something special. And so the sun in Aquarius is really the opposite of that. That's why the sun is in detriment in Aquarius, because it's not so much concerned with what the individual lives is. It's more interested in creating equality across the board. So it's almost like the energy of like just being given an award for showing up, versus rather than just one person getting an award for being the best at something. Aquarius is like, well, let's just give everybody an award for just showing up. You know, so there's like this very de-emphasizes the individual and his talents and his special gifts, or her special unique things that she's bringing to other people, whereas Aquarius just wants everything to kind of be starting from an equal ground. And it's interesting because it's basically, this full moon is pitting the rights of the individual versus the rights of everybody in society, the collective rights of everyone in society, and trying to create some kind of equality on that level. And so like what you have happen when the square comes to Mars and Uranus, you're going to have like each person individualistically acting out towards which one of those poles they're going towards, you know, and maybe going back and forth, you know, and depending on what the situation is. Now, what's interesting about this is I do think the Aquarius side is pitted to win out in this like current tension that's going on between them. And that is because it has Jupiter and Saturn with it. Jupiter and Saturn in agreement, Saturn very strong in Aquarius and wanting now to move forward and fix a lot of the problems that have been exposed by Pluto going through Capricorn, while Saturn was also going through Capricorn too the last 2.5 years. So, and now that Jupiter has moved on into Aquarius too, where it has some strength as a triplicity ruler, you know, basically these guys are giving the gift to the sun at this point. And so like the sun is actually even in between kind of the two. I mean, it's going to be exactly conjunct Jupiter, that day. And so like that just gives us like this real big desire to bring in more, to have new experiences. And yet at the same time, the conjunction to Saturn's like wants to stabilize and ground those things. So there's going to be people who are acting out from that and like really wanting to push that position. And I think you can even see that in the United States in this first few days of the new administration's term, where they're pushing, writing all these new orders that they say is going to equal the playing field, say economically, and for some of the other problems going on, social issues, the healthcare issues, things like that. So that's that sun, the authority, and wanting to expand Jupiter, those things, and stabilize the structure, Saturn, and to something new, Aquarius. And we're going to take individual acts, Mars, Uranus, to do that, even if it, creates a lot of tension and angst. And I think, the Leo sun here is that person who's screaming in the dark, well, what about, me and these individualistic, energies and gifts that I have? And so what we may see is a lot more of acting out in negative ways again from that moon in Leo, from just feeling like it's being disenfranchised, just feeling like it's being, not picked, that it's losing its freedom and things like that, and that's, so it's a really, really interesting little setup we have going on here. And, with the sun and Uranus and Mars, this can bring a lot of upsetting different kinds of events where things are not going to go the way that people want them to go. They're not going to go as planned. And so for people who are really stuck, and like when you look at this, it's a fixed T-square, we're all looking at where we're stuck kind of in this situation right now and trying to break free of a lot of that. It's interesting too, because when you think about what's going on with Mars and Uranus and Taurus, a lot of it is kind of being stuck about value systems and money and assets and a lot of those Taurus things. And it's really kind of like a traditional sign that's going on there. And yet Mars is like, well, I got to figure out different ways to move here if I'm going to be able to move at all. And Uranus is like, okay, well, maybe I can give you the push to do that. And, we see that come out in different ways where people are acting impulsively. That's what the Mars-Uranus does. Just like I said last week, the whole storming of the Capitol is a perfect example of this Mars-Uranus energy coming out in an impulsive way. So the Sun-Uranus is going to bring, and the Mars-Uranus is going to bring, and the Sun squaring Mars even, is these individuals acting out still, these people who are feeling disenfranchised. And then the Sun-Jupiter just adds to that, because it's really the push for people to go for what they want, and to bring in expansion into their life, no matter what that may be. So some really, really interesting energy going on, and it's like that fixed energy is really stubborn. Like Aquarius is like one of the most stubborn signs. It's just like, no, this is the way it's going to be. I don't really care how you feel about that, and Taurus is one of the most stubborn signs. It's like, no, this is the way it's always been, and this is the way I want it to stay. It's very traditional, really attached to heritage. And Leo, same thing, another stubborn sign. Says listen, I've got the right plan about how we need to deal with all this, but you're not listening to me anymore. You're trying to change me into some homogenous type of being that is no different than anyone else. So it's a really interesting T-square we got coming up here, and it's really going to force us to look at those issues, how much homogenization of society do we want And how does that, like, where does that leave the individual as a unique being, and their protection and that kind of thing? And like, how much are we willing to take away from those individuals to get what we feel is some kind of equality? And I think we're gonna get that over and over and over again. And I really thought, like, it's interesting because, I mean, the way the Leo moon could be best to express itself here is to find some unique thing that it can do that is for the benefit of the collective. So like, if the Leo moon can use that energy of the Mars-Uranus conjunction and not go overboard and too impulsive with it, but show this uniqueness that it has and how that can benefit all that Aquarius, then maybe there's a way to build a bridge around that energy, But once again, we have to look at like what humans normally do, and they do entrench themselves in their positions. And all three of these signs involved in this T-square are definitely very much entrenched into the positions. It's interesting too, the open side of the T-square is Scorpio, which is telling everybody, look deeper within yourself and look deeper within others. And, and don't keep this on the surface thing, that we really need to get down and dirty about what this actually means, all this energy to, the society and the individual. So very, very interesting energy. Now, if you look at the axis of the Leo Aquarius axis that the full moon falls on, 9 or 10 degrees, you can find the two houses in your chart that is that falls in, and then you'll see the area of your chart that this is most affecting. And any planets, obviously, in your chart that are around 9, 10 degrees are going to also aspect this full moon and filter the energy and kind of change it individually for you. So very, very powerful week again, and a lot of like real tense energy still being dealt with, and a lot of entrenched positions. So like kind of feeling like something's got to give kind of thing. So yeah, the other two things I wanted to mention quick is I believe it's on, is it Wednesday? Yeah, Wednesday. Venus conjuncts Pluto. And Venus is also square Eris this week. So that's kind of interesting. I mean, because Venus conjunct Pluto is kind of like more like that Leo thing or Scorpio thing versus an Aquarius thing. It's kind of like, or a Taurus thing. It's like Venus conjunct Pluto wants intensity in its relationships and in its creative expression, and will actually even create negative things to get that intensity if it's not getting it in a positive way. So this really is a great, great aspect for deepening one-on-one relationships. People who have romantic or love feelings for one another can really, really deepen that energy this week. But it also can trigger a lot of insecurities in relationships, a lot of that deep Scorpio stuff about, just possessiveness, or becoming a victim of someone who's, trying to manipulate you or use emotional experiences to like kind of possess you or something. So, and you can like become infatuated with certain people and not really be looking at that relationship in a balanced way, that it's very subjective and quite possibly unrealistic in the way that you're looking at it anyway. I mean, I'm not saying that it's a relationship that's not meant to be or something. It's just that you may not be looking at it at the way that it really is. But it just, older relationships, once again, are the things that you may react more negatively to this too, where, you know, you see like stuff that's just a little too intense. And then when you add the square to Eris, then you may just want to throw chaos into that whole thing. Now, newer relationships, you kind of is more where the positive side of this comes in, and you're kind of like interested in kind of like deepening those connections more, and bringing like more depth and trust and those kind of things, intimacy into the relationship. So really interesting energy there. And like I said, it kind of like favors more the Leo moon and the open end of the Scorpio thing on the full moon, you know, versus the Aquarius Taurus energy, because it wants to like, you know, bring things in that are deeper and has to do with one-on-one relationships more. And so the last thing is the Mercury retrograde. Okay, so that's going to start on Saturday the 30th. So we're, you know, basically in the shadow already, which is fine. You know, finish up the things you need to do this week. If there's certain things you still need to start or get going and finalize. And then, because you're going to have 3 weeks then where you really don't want to be starting anything new, especially if you want them to turn out the way you're kind of hoping they turn out. I mean, you're welcome to start anything you want during Mercury retrograde. I just would not expect the results to be what you expect. But in Aquarius, so this year, Mercury is going to have its 3 retrogrades in air versus last year when it was in water. And so it's going to be interesting because air is really where Mercury exists. You know, I mean, that guy's like floating around on those wings, you know, and just kind of flying around all the time. So that's like his natural kind of element to be in. And so like, basically what I'm feeling is like, you know, with Aquarius, I think you know, obviously air has a lot to do with communications, and Mercury retrograde, we know that communications can kind of get weird, and there can be a lot of misunderstandings, or there can just be like not hearing from people, etc., etc. So there's that. But I really think a lot of it may have to do with our technology, that like the communication issues that may come up may be a failure of our technologies during this Mercury retrograde period. And the same with even any travel issues that come up. It may be that technology is what causes, or failures of technology may cause the delays and the communication misunderstandings. And I'll be honest with you guys, you know, if the web is ever going to get taken down because of like whatever, you know, like a meteorite hitting, or you know, solar flares, or you know, somebody shooting down a satellite, or somebody like some hacker just turning it off, I would expect it to be during Mercury retrograde in Aquarius. So like we may have issues with all kinds of technical stuff, you know, and we see, usually when Mercury's retrograde, you see how all the computer stuff slows down. You go into a store, oh, the computer's not been working too good today. It's like, yeah, it's Mercury retrograde. So like how far this can go in Aquarius can be very interesting, because our whole reality is more and more being based on just like these virtual kind of energy, basically, of just electronics and communications. And that's what Mercury and Aquarius is all about. So, you know, like I said, if there's ever a time when we're going to have with issues, where we could have a major issue, like even a major shutdown of something like the web or some of the networks that are, you know, we use for our cell phones, this could be the time. So, till February 20th, and so a long time in Aquarius. It went out to 26, 27 Mercury before it's going to turn around. So it's going to stay in Aquarius for all of February and into March. It's going to be like 10 weeks or so in Aquarius that Mercury will be. So, I mean, we really need to expect these next 3 weeks, starting on Saturday, things, you know, that are Mercury related, you know, are not going to be going well. All right. That just about does it for this week. like, once again, a lot of changes going on, a lot of challenges going on. The sun is sextile Chiron this week, so there are opportunities to, get some healing and new knowledge. And I do think, we can work with that full moon, but it has to connect all that stuff. That individual gift we have to be motivated on, but we're going to have to prove to others and the collective that it has value to them and the direction that they're headed right now. And otherwise, like I said, some deepening of relationships in either a negative or positive way is also one of the things to look for. So try to keep it positive. If this stuff comes up, don't run from the shadow. Instead, face it with your other and deepen that relationship. All right, this is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel. I'm on YouTube. Become a follower. Numbers, I think we're approaching 70 followers, so that's, I know it's not much, but we only started on the YouTube about a year ago or so. So also, I'm on all kinds of podcasts, Spotify and Apple Podcasts, things like that. So just go on to whatever podcast, because from what I understand, the podcasts are just going out to all these different places where podcasts are held. So I could be on a bunch of the different podcasts, and you just got to look up the Astrological Winds channel. And become a follower, like I said. And, it's a free service, so the best thing you guys can do is please to continue to share the channel with anyone who you think would be interested in it. And then, of course, I'm available for readings, so please contact me about that at matthue823@gmail.com. All kinds of readings, natal, which is your chart reading, understanding the energies of your chart, and then, the predictive reading, where you can look at the year ahead, see how the energy of the planets these days is affecting your chart. And then, of course, all kinds of other stuff too, relationship stuff. And then there's the classes. We have 5 classes right now, working on the 6th one. If you want to be a student, you take them sequentially. If you just want to learn a little bit more about a certain subject matter, then you can just take one. They are $25 a class, or $20 if you have a student ID. Right now on Dropbox, so you pay me, and then on Zelle or PayPal, and then you just, I will turn you on to the files on Dropbox. And I will try to get all that reset up on website soon, get my website republished. Anyway, so available for all that stuff. Just contact me and we can do that. So next week we'll look at the month of February and the first week of February together. So it'll kind of be a double episode, so to spek. So until then, continue to skate these hard times and changing times, and right now we're really kind of feeling like we're going to want to hold on with all this fixed energy, but we're going to have to continue to allow these changes to occur, because they are going to occur, and we just need to remain flexible, remain having the ability to make decisions based on new circumstances quickly. Okay, until next week, this is Matt Lutton, and I'm signing off.